Well, thank you for joining us, Vasily.
No, thank you for having me.
So we are so privileged to have Vasily Doganis with us. He is the writer-director of the film Meltem. If you haven't seen it, we recommend you watch all of our movies, but we're talking with Vasily now, so you saw Meltem. Vasily, you are a Greek-French writer-director. You studied philosophy, and you really have a history in documentaries. Your first documentary, I believe, was in Japan, entitled On the Edge.
Yes.
And you worked as the first assistant director to Jean-Pierre Limousin on his documentary about like the really well-received film, Young Yakuza. I mean, that was a huge success when it came out. It premiered in Cannes in 2007. You directed 2 narrative shorts in French, which I could pronounce, but all right, I will. Le Jardin de son frère.
Gardien, yeah.
And Journée d'appel, and which have also been official selections to more than 50 film festivals worldwide. So you're getting used to all of this attention. And in 2019, you directed a documentary about the last 10 years of a dancer. So that must have been an extremely interesting process. But we are here to discuss your feature-length debut, which is Meltem. And it's just an extraordinary film that touched all of our hearts. And so what was the transition like for you going from short to feature-length? And, you know, telling this story in an hour and a half versus the more compressed format that you've been working in?
Yeah, that's a simple but very hard question, actually, because there are many parameters, and I think that one of them for feature films is really about, you know, stories that need time to develop and need time to expand. And actually, as far as I'm concerned, I think that even in my short films, I really needed actually that time to have all the storylines, you know, intertwine. And because very often I really like to have many characters and have like chorus kind of films. So in my case, I think it was almost easier or less frustrating to have at least the space and time to develop such a story. And then as far as the documentary fiction distinction is concerned, it's also a very interesting point, because I think I'll always do both. I really love both, but I think that my practice of both is mutually influencing the other. You know, like when I do fiction, I really like improvisation a lot, which is a feature which is I think what is connecting fiction to documentary. You know, this sense of reality and spontaneity. And conversely, also when I make documentaries, I really like to write them, you know, and not just record what is happening around. It's very important to for me to, at least to write things down and be very specific about what I want to do. Yeah.
So even if it's a documentary, there's always a story to be told.
Yes, and a lot of writing, which is actually not. I mean, for people who are involved in film, it's pretty obvious, but I think for many spectators, it's not necessarily completely understood. So I think it's sometimes good to remind that too.
Vasily, tell us a little bit, speaking of writing, and you co-wrote the film Meltem. So I really wanted to hear a little bit about how did the co-writing process work for you and the co-writer, but also, you know, the influence that you brought, being a French citizen, but also of Greek descent, and having a film that takes place in Greece the way you see it, as someone who's also been living abroad for most of your life. Tell us a little bit about combining all of it.
Okay, let me tackle the second question first, if you don't mind. About the many themes that are involved in Meltem, and that thing about, you know, being a foreigner and that feeling of not necessarily belonging to only one place, but many at the same time. There's a very nice expression in French that I really love, which is avoir le cul entre deux chaises, to have one's ass between two chairs, which means you cannot really sit in either of them. I don't know if it exists in English. In Greek, we don't have it, but I don't know if in English we have something equivalent. Yeah, I really love that expression because it's very trivial. You know, it's like, okay, where am I gonna sit? And I can't because I have like two chairs and I'm right in the middle. And I think that one of the very long term, because when you write a screenplay, I think there are some elements which are, you know, long term, and some others which are triggered by a more short term event or situation. So the long term part for me was really trying to come up with a story that could tackle that feeling, you know, of it's not a feeling of not belonging anywhere. It's really the feeling of belonging to many places at the same time, which prevents you from being completely and totally present only in one place. You know, it's I think it's a subtle distinction, but it's very important. So I think that I for years now I really wanted to make a film about that specific situation. And the more short-term event that triggered the whole story was the 2015 combination of the refugee crisis in Greece and also the economic crisis. You know, it was the time where it was a question that Greece might, you know, be kicked out of the European Union and the Eurozone, the Grexit as it was called back then. Combined with the, you know, the last evolutions of the Syrian war. So it was the highest peak of Syrian refugees also coming to Europe through Greece. And it was also the summer, you know, so the Greek summer with a cliche postcard kind of situation where, you know, very wealthy tourists were flooding Greece as well, going for a vacation. And, you know, it was like Greek people were very, very anxious about, you know, the future of their own country. All these migrants were coming from the Middle East, mainly Syria, but of course also from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Africa also, African countries. So it was a very surreal situation at the time. And for me, it was really like it gave the opportunity to talk about the present, you know, to talk about the political craziness of our world, you know, which allowed within the same space, for example, the Greek island in 2015 was, you know, depending on who you were focusing on, it was like an ideal postcard place to just have your vacation. It was a place where you were seeking asylum when you were coming from a country at war, or it was a fabulous country which was about maybe to collapse or see its future really, its destiny really compromised by the political situation. So I think that the combination of these two elements, you know, this more long-term need to address the question of multiple identities and how you never really fits only one, and this situation of the economic / migrant crisis were the key elements that were behind my desire to make this film. Yeah.
Well, we thank you for making it. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have shot in France and in the French language. You have shot in Japan. You've shot in Greece. Why did you choose Greece for this story? And how is it different shooting in Greece than anywhere else?
Actually, I had a few projects before that were to be set in France, which never, you know, were possible. So also it was not like my first absolute first need to make a film in Greece for this specific subject, because it was so connected to the crisis, the economic crisis and the migrants crisis in Greece in 2015. It would really not have been possible to make that specific film anywhere else. And especially it had to be on one of the islands that were really, that were the actual place of asylum of all the migrants and the tourists flooding at that time. So Lesbos was really the perfect place to really address all these questions. And what was it like? I mean, well, obviously I'm very fond of my mother country. Apart from that, I mean, the crews and actors in Greece are really fantastic. I think that you had, or you will have, a specific panel about filming in Greece. No, really, it's amazing the experience and the level of professionalism of the people involved in this industry in Greece. And maybe, you know, it's so hard actually to make a living also from cinema in Greece, that the people who remained, it's really, you know, their motivation and their skills are very, very high and exceptional. And I was, you know, having had some experiences in as you said, France and Japan as well. I'm not, you know, comparing things, but the level in Greece is very, very high indeed. So it was really a pleasure to work with my crew and actors in Greece. It was fantastic, actually.
Yeah, we seem to be hearing the same feedback a lot lately from various filmmakers, whether their films are featured at the Greek Film Expo on demand, or just people we know who reach out to us asking for advice before they take off to Greece to, you know, scout locations and whatnot. And it makes us very happy and hopeful for the future. And of course, you know, very proud because we know how much our homeland has to offer in terms of people and labor and whatnot. Basile, making a film that's bilingual and in many ways an international co-production, was that beneficial to getting financing and just producing and seeing it through much easier? Is it helpful when it comes to distribution and next steps for Meltem? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, as far as, yeah, it's how to answer this in a simple and efficient way. Okay, if it had been a French film, in some aspects it would have been easier because, but that's really because of the French system, which is very, very developed and very supportive of the cinematographic industry. So, for instance, I would have had access to some regional funds apart from the national fund. You know, it's all kind of other grants would have been possible. On the other hand, the fact that it was a co-production allowed me to have some access to some co-production funds. Like there's a specific fund between the two film centers of France and Greece, which I had the luck to be granted. So the French Greek Film Center, like co-production fund. And I also had the two funds separately. And then of course, when you make a co-production, it allows you to try to find some money in both places. I was just saying that in the case of France, which is really a kind of specific situation because it's very, very privileged in a sense in the whole, you know, world cinema scene. Still, I had this opportunity to have some finances come from both countries. So in that sense, it was really beneficial. Then it's always, you know, it's always a bit complex because sometimes it's more when we talk about distribution, it's always more simple to distribute a film that is more specifically, you know, either in terms of genre or nationality. It's things are more clear for people who market films and distribute them when you say, okay, it's just a French film, or it's just a comedy, or it's just a drama. When you start to have, you know, many factors kind of intertwined, which is specifically what I love. So here we have like 3 languages, it's 2 main countries, it's it goes from drama to comedy, it switches all the time. So it's much more difficult, actually, I think, for people in distribution and marketing to address such hybrid films. But, you know, that's it depends on how you look at things. Either you can just see the negative side, which is more difficult, or you can see it as a source of opportunity. So yeah.
Perspective, like everything in life.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes a big difference. And Mary, we have a few minutes left with Basile. I'm wondering, I mean, we have many more questions to discuss, to ask you, but do we also want to open the Q&A for our audience members?
Of course.
Just so you know, we've been getting a lot of comments from people who watch the film around the US, again, with the exception of California, unfortunately, but people loving the music, people really appreciating the diversity of the cast and how true you stayed to the world that you were taking us into. Tell us a little bit about the casting process, and also tell us a bit, I mean, there's so many special moments in it's such a universal film, because at the end of the day, it's about family and the loss of a parent and the need to belong someplace, any place, and the need for survival, right? And what's the cost of that? What's the cost of surviving in today's world? Whether your skin is a certain color or you speak a certain language and then you don't speak another language. Anyway, I'm going on and on, but tell us a little bit about the casting process, and then
yes, of course.
The composer, the music.
Of course. So let's start from the second question first. Sorry, it's going to be a bit shorter, and then I'll move on to the casting. So the composer is Kyriakos Kalaitzidis, the main composer of the film. He's the one who made, for instance, who composed the main track of the film, which is called Meltemaki, Little Meltem. And his wife is the lyricist, Vasiliki Nevrokopli.
Wonderful.
Who's a great author also of novels, short stories, and young adult novels in Greece. And as far as the casting is concerned, well, of course, Daphne Patakia, who is playing Elena, was supposed to be here, but she unfortunately couldn't make it. I wrote the parts of the two guys playing Nassim and Sekou, and who are played by Raba Naitufela and Lamine Sissoko. I actually wrote those parts for these specific people whom I had worked with and whom I really love. Like we're very, very, we're just very good friends right now. As far as the part of Elena is concerned, I had seen Daphne in some previous films, which I had really liked, but still, I hadn't worked with her, and I wanted to leave the part open also for maybe not necessarily Greek actresses or Greek French actresses or Greek Belgian actresses like Daphne. But actually she was so good, during the whole casting process that it was not because like I specifically wanted someone who could be fluent in both languages that I chose her. This is very important. I really chose her because she was the best of all the actors I saw for this part. And I think, of course, she could identify a lot, of course, because of her own story, and she became a sort of an alter ego for me, in this whole process. And she's a wonderful artist and a wonderful person as well. So it was a fantastic collaboration. And just a few words about the other ones. I cannot mention, of course, all the actors, but the case of the young man who plays Elias, the Syrian refugee, is very important because actually I came upon him through a radio show in France. Like he was just testifying about his own journey because he's a real migrant actually from Syria, and he's not even Syrian really. He's a Palestinian refugee already from Syria. There are many people who don't even have the Syrian nationality in Syria and who came originally from Palestine, and like he's the third generation Palestinian refugee from Syria who managed to make it to France. And like he was just speaking about his journey in this radio show, and so I didn't even have access to his face, just listening to his voice. And his testimony and the way he spoke about it was so great that I thought I would, you know, just ask him for a casting. And actually I saw him, and he has also these, he has this very beautiful face, but which is very interesting also because he has these green eyes, so he could be European. Mm-hmm. Also, he has these other features which definitely also allow people to associate him to, you know, a more Middle Eastern origin. So for the character, it was great because, you know, there's this ambiguity at first. We don't really see him immediately as a foreigner, as a migrant, whatever. He could very well be just a European tourist in the island, just as the others. And this ambiguity also was very important to the film. And just a little also note about that, it's, I was very happy because actually not only because of the film, but also partly because of it, he was granted the French citizenship just a few months ago, and that was one of the best rewards for me in this film. So yeah.
Well, we had one of our questions, actually, you answered it. With,
oh, cool.
They commented that they've been working with the refugees on Greek islands for the last 5 years, and mm-hmm. Elias was so extraordinarily on mark with his messaging, his character, so you nailed it as a writer, he nailed it as an actor.
Mm. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead, Basile, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add that because, of course, the shooting took place in Lesbos, and it was in 2017 that the shooting took place. So, of course, I mean, there have been many phases in the Greek islands, you know, on the border between Greece and Turkey, like in the very eastern islands of Greece, like Lesbos. And in 2017, the situation was not as bad as 2015, but better than it is now. And so there were still many migrants who were waiting for either their visa for Greece or for other European countries that they had applied to. And during the process, I really wanted the you know, the parts of migrants to be played by actual migrants who were present at the time. And at the same time, I really didn't feel comfortable, you know, with just being present as a camera team amidst such a harsh situation, you know. So of course, it was out of the question, for instance, to go into the camps and film there. Like, it was not also the core of the film. It was not about that either. But what I really wanted was to have people know that this was happening on the island, and of course give them the opportunity to play if they wanted, and of course to be treated like professionals. So every extra who agreed to play the film was paid like an extra, you know, and they were very, very happy actually to for once to be part of a creative process, you know, and not be only handled as victims of war or of the geopolitical situation. I think it was very empowering for them at some points to, you know, to be able to be treated like completely fellow human beings and fellow co-creators of something that also was about their condition. So, I mean, it would take hours to describe the meetings we had with all these wonderful people and whom we're still in touch with. So. Anyway, it was from many levels. It was a fantastic moment. Also, one of the, for me, the most interesting aspects also was that, you know, the two guys that I was talking about who play Nassim and Sekou, who I really actually wrote for. They come from very tough neighborhoods in France, you know. So. On a social ladder, in a sense, they are very low in terms of how they are perceived, at least in France, and what their opportunities were. And what was very interesting to me was that very often the refugees that were coming could be from social layers who were much higher, actually, you know, in terms of economic opportunities, education. There were many doctors and many people who had very, very high standards and who all of a sudden had lost everything. So it was very interesting to me also to have this confrontation of people who are the underdogs of a country and all of a sudden to become the privileged people of another country because of the situation. And this is also what happens between them, their characters, and the character of Elias in the film. And yes, you know, instead of having this very black or white, very binary dichotomy between, you know, privileged and people who are not, it's things were much more complex than that at that time. And in the film, I tried to give at least a glimpse of this complexity.
And you did. I think you did a wonderful job with that, and so do a lot of people who take the time to, after watching the film, to reach out to us and make sure that we pass on their compliments and whatnot. It's unfortunate because, again, it's something that's been going on for years. War refugees and all sorts of refugees is nothing new in this world that we live in, unfortunately. History tends to repeat itself, but what you managed to do so wonderfully was to show that it isn't as simple as black and white as, oh, you know, they're bombing us and that's why we have to go. And that's that. There's so much behind that. Mary, I don't know if there's a couple of questions that we got, but I feel like they're giving away the end of the film. So I want to go back and not ask them because the ending is so incredible and so very realistic, you know, at the same time as to what, you know, what happens next. That being said, well, speaking of what happens next, what's going on with you? I see that the sky above you is getting really dark right now. So we've been keeping you for a while, Basile, but tell us a little bit about what you're working on next, whatever you can share, because we're excited to know.
Okay, so there's one thing which is very, very secret still, so I cannot talk about it. But the other thing, which is a bit less, is it's a project that I will write and hopefully direct in Germany, in Berlin, and it has to do with a lot with also East Berlin, you know, the Berlin Wall, and anyway. And also, I'm also working on a new documentary project right now, which has to do with family ghosts. I don't know if you're familiar with this notion of the transgenerational psychoanalysis.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so okay, so
this is something that's speaking out. People are realizing more and more. There's a lot of science behind it now. That, you know what, your brown eyes is not the only thing that your mother or your father's side has passed on to you. There's a lot of internal trauma and a lot of stuff. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And again, we have so much respect and admiration for your work that I think anything that you do next, we're going to be here to support it in any way that we can.
Thank you so much, really.
Of course, it's our pleasure. If it wasn't good, we wouldn't be here right now, Basile. Mary, do you have any last questions?
I have one last question.
Sure.
Because from the opening scene, before we hear any words about this film, the music hooks us. I am transported to Greece. I am there. The music is a Meltemi at times, bringing me back and forth. Tell us about this music, because it was extraordinary.
Yeah. Thank you for asking me, because I also felt a bit frustrated that I didn't say enough about how deeply I respect and love the work of the composer of the film, Kyriakos Kalaitzidis. What was really wonderful in the collaboration with him, and also I'll add just a little note about the co-composer also of the film, who is a very dear friend, Nicolas Gigou, also, who made the arrangements of the more electronic music parts. So Kyriakos, what he has is that he's a really also an academic, you know, like he has studied very thoroughly Byzantine music. He knows about all the traditions of Middle Eastern music, Greek music, Turkish music. Like, he's a savant in a sense, you know, in terms of music. So he could really compose original tracks like he did for the film, but by totally respecting the style of and the specificities, for example, of the Lesbos island tradition. So many people, when they hear those songs, they think they already exist in the repertoire, but it's not the case. It's really original tracks only. And it was really a pleasure to be able to share ideas and you know, find these resonances between the narrative motives, the themes of the film, and how music was treated. And for me, it was also important to have this other layer of more modern and more you know, electronic music, hip-hop music, like Nicolas Gigoux added. And because it was a bit like the characters, you know, it's their own trajectories in life. In a sense, they come from a country, they live somewhere else. So in a sense, their life is a remix of their parents' origins, for example. And for me, it was very important that musically this also happened, you know, to have a Greek core, and a Greek with many, you know, brackets, because Greek music, of course, is already such a hybrid music, which is so much infused from Arabic music and all kinds of traditions. And this, to have it remixed into more, you know, electro or hip hop tracks by someone else, was really a form of, like, a metaphor, you know, of what the characters were also going through. So we tried to do this on the level of the music of the film, as well as thematically and narratively.
Excellent work.
Really a wonderful collaboration. Your casting, we've gotten comments about how extraordinary the casting was.
Yeah, they were great.
Obviously, the film never works if the script isn't there. The directing was excellent. You really, for your first feature, I mean, this could have been your 20th.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Vasily, we want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us all the way from the other side of the world.
No, thank you, really.
It is really, truly our pleasure and an honor. Just to remind everyone who's watching this right now, or who will check it out tomorrow or whenever, the expo, the Greek Film Expo on demand, is available until July 20th, 11:45 p.m. at night, Eastern Time, New York time. Check out Meltem and all the wonderful films we have curated for you. And also a very special thanks to everybody at the Hellenic Film Society USA, who's been working tirelessly this last couple of months to make all of this happen and try and bring a taste of Greece and introduce Greek immensely talented filmmakers like yourself. You see, I didn't say French, I said Greek.
You did well, you did well. Thank you so much, Stavros and Maria, and all the people from the HFS. Really. Thank you so much.
We thank our colleagues, the founder of the Hellenic Film Society USA, of course, Jimmy Dimitro. Kids screaming in the background, no problem. And our colleagues, Eva Malis, Vicky Rekoutis, George Palafoutis, Mary and myself, Nancy Stephanopoulos, and of course George Stephanopoulos, last but not least, who organized all of these webinars and who was kind enough to take countless hours to put all this together. So, σας ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Vasily, you have friends in New York, you have friends all around the US, and in any way that we can support you, we're here for you.
Thank you so much. Take care, really. Thank you.
Mil merci.
If you liked what we had today I thought we had a great time. It's super sweltery outside here in New York. Great day to sit inside in the air conditioning. Join us tomorrow, where George will be doing another couple of films with a behind-the-scenes panel. So stay warm, or stay cool. Enjoy the summer, and please stay healthy and safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.